So good morning dear students. Today I am going to deal you with the poem Easter 1916 by W.B. Yeats. So before getting into the poem, let me introduce you to the poet William Butler Yeats. Okay, so he is an Irish poet and he was born on June 13th, 1865 and died on Jan 28, 1939. So he is an Irish poet, dramatist, and he's one of the pioneers of 20th century literature. And his contribution to English literature is high than to his native Irish literature. And it is in Irish literature he is remembered for his role in reviving the literature. And one notable thing about W.B. Yeats is he has won Nobel Prize for Literature in the year 1923, and he's the first Irishman to win a Nobel Prize for Literature. He's the first man to be honored with the Nobel Prize, and he is also considered as an Irish national poet, and he is also a modernist poet, and he is a leader of Irish literary movement too, and he's a great good friend of Rabindranath Tagore. It is being said that he has helped Tagore in Gitanjali, okay, in the translation of Gitanjali, and he's a great admirer of Indian mythology and epic. So this is all about William Butler Yeats. And now let's move on to the background of the poem Easter 1916. So Easter 1916 speaks about the Easter uprising that happened in Ireland in the year 1916 on April 24th. Okay. It was the time when Ireland was under the control of British. So Britishers were ruling Ireland, and the people of Ireland did not like to be ruled by the Britishers. So they wanted their own laws, and the people of Ireland believed that they wanted to make their own laws, and the only way to make this happen is fight against the British or to rebel against the British. And this was the reason for Easter uprising, which happened in the year 1916 on April 24th. And it was during that Easter uprising, what happened is that most of the buildings in Dublin, Ireland, were destroyed, and many innocent citizens of Ireland were killed. And it was it was a great battle between the people of Ireland as well as the Britishers who ruled Ireland. And many people were not happy with this, okay, with this rebellion, because many people lost their lives and lost their loved ones. And finally, this incident, that is Easter uprising, ended up for 6 days, and the rebels, they decided to surrender because the entire city was ruined. Okay, and the Britishers then ordered to execute all the 6 leaders who gave much importance, who were the reason behind the Easter uprising. So this is the background of the poem. And here Yeats is one person who were against war and everything, because war was the time when people suffered a lot, and many does not want a war. Okay, so many were thirsting for ruling over the other countries. Their thirst was to conquer other nation. But the people it was the innocent civilians who suffer because of this war and everything. So Yeats was one person who was against this war. Okay, and here you could see that he uses many symbols in this poem, many symbols where an irony where he was not much interested in this Easter uprising. So that you could see in this poem. Now let's move on to the poem. Okay. So let me tell you the structure of the poem. So the poem is comprised of 80 lines, okay, 80 lines and 4 stanzas of varying length. The first stanza and the third stanza consist of 16 lines, whereas the second stanza and the fourth stanza contains 24 lines. And the notable thing in this poem is that it has a refrain, that is, the line, "A terrible beauty is born," is repeated 3 times in the poem, in 3 different stanzas. It's repeated in 3 stanzas. And the rhyme scheme of the poem is AB, AB. So this is the structure. Now let's move on to the poem. Let's see the poem, each stanza. I'll explain you every stanza. Okay. So the first stanza. I have met them at close of day, coming with vivid faces, from counter or desk among grey 18th century houses. I have passed with a nod of the head, or polite meaningless words, or I have lingered a while and said polite meaningless words, and thought before I had done of a mocking tale or a jibe, to please a companion around the fire at the club, being certain that they and I but lived where motley is one, all changed, utterly changed, a terrible beauty is born. So here we could see that the poet speaks about the people whom he whom he used to meet were the people who involved in the Irish in the Easter uprising. Okay, so he says that I have met all these people, all these rebellions, all these revolutionaries who are involved in the Easter uprising. So I used to meet them at the end of each day. So at the end of each day, coming with vivid faces. So I have seen these people coming with vivid faces at the end of the day. And also he brings out the 18th century Ireland, buildings of Ireland. He says that from counter or desk among grey 18th century houses. So he's saying, he also brings out a picture of the 18th century Ireland buildings. And he says that I have passed with a nod of the head or polite meaningless words. It is, I have seen these people and I have passed a word with these people. Just I have nodded my head with these people. I had polite meaningless words with these people. Okay, so with these people. Okay, so he had a good chat with these people. And also to please the companion, they used to have some mocking tales, some funny stories and everything. And that is how these people were. But what happened is, all of a sudden, there was a complete change in the attitude of these people. Okay, so he even uses irony in this stanza, where he says that they used to spend time in a silly manner, a silly or a pointless way. That is, they had funny stories, and he says that lived where motley is worn. Okay, motley means it's a kind of colorful dress where these clowns and unusual wear. So he is making a kind of irony. He brings out an ironical statement here that they used to spend time in a silly manner, in a pointless way and everything. But what happened is, the people of this kind, all of a sudden they changed. That's what he says in the last part of the stanza. All changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. But everything changed all of a sudden. These people who were once having a chat and mocking stories, later on they have changed completely. Their attitude have changed. So that is what he explains in the first stanza. So he's trying to trying to showcase the people who involved in the rebellion were once common people with common, having a common chat, funny stories and everything. But later on, the thirst for freedom for their nation changed them utterly. Okay, and he says a terrible beauty is born. It's a kind of paradox here. A terrible beauty. A terrible refers to the violent nature of these people. Okay, beauty is born. Why this violence is become this a violent beauty? Okay, he says terrible beauty is born. This violent beauty is for the freedom of Ireland. Okay, so this is what the first stanza is all about. Now coming to the second stanza. Here in second stanza, he explains the attitude of each character or the leaders, few leaders. He explains how these leaders, how these people, these revolutionaries, how their attitude was. Okay, let's go with the stanza 2, the first part of the stanza. That woman's days were spent in ignorant goodwill, her nights in argument, until her voice grew shrill. What voice more sweet than hers, when young and beautiful, she rode to harriers. This man had kept a school and rode our winged horse. This other, his helper and friend, was coming into his force. He might have won fame in the end. So sensitive his nature seemed, so daring and sweet his thought. This other man I had dreamt, a drunkard, vainglorious lout. He had done most bitter wrong to some who are near my heart, yet I number him in the song. He too has resigned his part in the casual comedy. He too has been changed in his turn, transformed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. So here you could see that he brings out a picture of four revolutionists who actively involved in Easter uprising. Okay, and the first part he speaks about a woman. And it's not sure about which woman he's actually speaking, but we can assume that he talks about Constance Markievicz, who was an Irish nationalist who actually involved in the Irish freedom movement. Okay, so it's just an assumption. Okay, and he's trying to explain the characteristics or the attitude of that woman. He says that woman's days were spent an ignorant goodwill. So she spent her days in an ignorant way, and she often had arguments with her friends or whomever she come across, until her voice grew shrill. So maybe she was so much involved in the politics that and she wanted, the main purpose or the goal of Constance Markievicz was to gain freedom for her nation. Okay, and that may have changed her attitude or changed her the way of behavior, being violent or arrogant. Her voice grew shrill, he's telling. So what voice more sweet than hers? So once her voice was so sweet, and she was so young and beautiful, and she used to have fun going for she rode to harriers. So all of a sudden her attitude is changing, and she is completely involved in political activities and everything, and she fights for freedom. She is becoming arrogant, she becomes violent and everything. So this is what he speaks about the woman who involved in Easter uprising. This is how he speaks about her attitude. And next, he speaks about a man who kept a school. Maybe he had that that particular person had run a school, and his name is assumed as Patriopius. Okay, so this man and rode our winged horse. See, here you could find he uses a symbol of winged horse. Winged horse in Greek mythology, it is referred as Pegasus, which is a symbol of freedom or liberty. And he's trying to showcase Patriopius as a symbol of liberty. That is, his goal was to gain freedom for Ireland. Okay, that is how his nature is showcased here. And next he's moving on to the next man. This other, his helper and friend, was coming into his force. He might have won fame in the end. Next he is talking about the friend of Patriopius, who also actively involved in the Easter uprising, and that his name is assumed as Thomas MacDonagh. Okay, and this person, Thomas MacDonagh, is he's sensitive in nature. He's a very good person, and his thoughts and ideas are so sweet. That's what Yeats explains in his poem. Okay, and so this is what this other man. This is what he tries to. So this man also changes. Okay, he's a sweet person. He's a person with good attitude. But the purpose of gaining freedom for Ireland, changes the attitude of the person. That is, being a soft person and changing into a violent person. Okay. And next person Yeats speaks about is about a drunkard. Okay, so this other man I had dreamt is a drunkard, a vainglorious lout. He had done most bitter wrong to some who are near my heart. So he speaks about the attitude of a person, and that person is Major John McBride. So John McBride is a drunkard, and he also actively involved in Easter uprising. Okay, he's telling, Yeats says that he had done most bitter wrong to some who are near my heart. See, the wife of Major John McBride is Maud Gonne, Maudgone, Maud Gonne. Actually, W.B. Yeats proposed Maud Gonne several times. Okay, and he loved her a lot. But unfortunately, she became the wife of Major John McBride, who was a drunkard. And maybe being a drunkard, he might have attacked his wife. And that is maybe the reason he says that Yeats mentions that he had done most bitter wrongs. He had done something wrong to some who are near my heart. Maybe he might have attacked Maud Gonne, whom Yeats loved. Okay, so Yeats actually hates Major John McBride because he is a drunkard and he has a kind of wrong way of behavior. Yet I remember him in the song. He too has resigned his part in the casual comedy. He too has been changed in his turn, transformed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. So here he's telling that even though he was a drunkard and he has done all kinds of wrong doings, I mention him in this song, in my song, because he also involved in Easter uprising. So that's what it is about to tell you. Okay. So even though he was once a very drunkard and he involved in wrongdoings, later on this man changed. Actually, he has resigned his part in the casual comedy. He was an ordinary man, a drunkard, and who used to do all those wrong things. But later on, he also changed, and he also involved actively in Easter uprising with the goal of gaining freedom for Ireland. Okay, so here in second stanza, he explains the attitude of each and every revolutionarist who actively involved in Easter uprising with a goal or with an aim to gain freedom for Ireland. Okay, so this is what second stanza is. Now let's move on to the third stanza. Hearts with one purpose alone, through summer and winter seem enchanted to a stone, to trouble the living stream, the horse that comes from the road, the rider, the birds that range from cloud to tumbling cloud. Minute by minute they change. A shadow of cloud on the stream changes minute by minute. A horse hoof slides on the brim, and a horse plashes within it. The long-legged moor hens dive, and hence to moorcocks call. Minute to minute they live, the stones in the midst of all. So here it tells that all these people, that is all these rebels, their hearts has one purpose only, and that purpose is to gain freedom for, or to get freedom for Ireland from British. And this thought or this aim of them, of these people or these rebels, cannot be changed. They cannot change. They are never ready to change. They are like stones which cannot move. Okay, so that's what he is trying to tell. He's telling, and he uses several images here, just giving an example that through images that all these things are changing, but these rebels, revolutionaries, they are not changing. So that's what he's telling. The horse that comes from the road, the rider, the birds that range from cloud to tumbling cloud. So all these are images of nature where everything is changing. Okay, when people ride on a horse, they always used to change it. When birds fly over, the birds, they always change its directions. So from the clouds they are moving, always changes. Okay, so everything is changing, minute by minute they change. But these people, you know, these revolutionaries who is rebelling against the British government, they are not changing. Okay, they never change. They are like stones. We cannot change them. Okay, because their purpose, their hearts were like stones. Their hearts cannot change. Okay, their hearts has only one purpose, is to get freedom from the freedom for Ireland from the British and to make their own laws. Okay, and he says a horse hoof slides on the brim, horse splashes within it, the long-legged moor hens dive, and he is also giving the images of moor hens. Moor hens, they always love to dive in water. Okay, dive in water. But when they receive a call from moorcocks, you know, they immediately moves to the moorcock. They just jumps out of the water and move to the moorcocks. So what he is trying to say is that even these moor hens, they live at the moment. Okay, so even they have a change. So everything is changing. But who is not changing? These revolutionists are not changing. Okay, they are with a goal, or they are with an thought that they wanted to get freedom, and they are fighting for that, and they are ready to sacrifice their life for that. So that is what is explained in the third stanza. So here he uses many images. So now let's move on to the last stanza, the fourth stanza. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. Oh, when may it suffice? That's heaven's part, our part, to murmur name upon name, as a mother names her child when sleep at last has come, on limbs that had run wild. But is it but nightfall? No, no, not night, but death. Was it needless death after all? For England may keep faith, For that is done and said, we know their dream, enough to know they dreamt and are dead. And what if excess of love bewildered them till they died? I write it out in a verse, McDonough and McBride, and Connolly and Pierce. Now and in time to be, wherever green is worn, are changed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. So now he talks about the sacrifice, about the rebellion who has sacrificed their life for the freedom of Ireland. And he says that their hearts lost their feelings because they are ready to die. Okay, and he's telling that he's not accepting. He never supports this. He's telling that what is the thing there? What is the worth in it? Okay, what is the worth in it? And also he says he uses a simile here. Okay, the figure of speech simile is used over here, where he compares, that is, when these people sacrifice their life, the entire Ireland or their loved ones started mourning. And he's comparing that mourning of those people to the mourning of a mother who cries when her child sleeps at last. Okay, when child sleeps at last means when her child dies. So he's comparing the mourning of a mother who lost her child in such a way he compares it with the mourning of the people of Ireland. Okay, so here he uses simile. And he talks about nightfall. Okay, he says it's a nightfall, but he says, no, I'm not talking about night, I'm talking about death. Here also you could see that he uses night as a metaphor for death. Okay, so we know their dream enough to know they dreamt are dead and are dead. And what if excess of love bewildered them till they died? So what made these people sacrifice their life? Okay, their dream was to gain freedom for Ireland, and they are ready to sacrifice their life. And it's very difficult for us to change their attitude, because they are with the purpose of one heart that they wanted to gain freedom for Ireland, and they're ready to sacrifice their life. Okay, and it may be the excess of love for their nation that bewildered them, that maybe they got confused and that changed their attitude. Okay, who were once common people with a kind of common attitude. But later on, the excess of love for their nation has transformed these people, and they even sacrificed their life. And he's telling, at last I write out in a verse. So he's thinking about the uprising. And he mentions few leaders here, McDonough and McBride, and Connolly and Pierce. Okay, and now and in time to be, wherever green is worn. So now he brings out green is worn. Maybe he mentions the uniform, the green uniform of Irish. So in the beginning we saw in the first stanza, motley is worn, which is a kind of irony or a metonymy is used there. Okay, here he says green is worn. That seems to be funny, whereas here it is very serious. Okay, so everything is changed. Okay, so the attitude of people changed, and finally they were ready to sacrifice their life for the nation because of the excess love for the nation. Okay, and this is what here he mentions, or changed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. So here we could find that terrible beauty is born is a paradox used by Yeats, where he feels admiration and detachment for the people who involved in Easter uprising. So, and this is what the poem is all about. Okay, thank you.